Story 1. This story takes place at a food market, which surprisingly seems to attract a lot of entitled people. I was waiting in line to check out. There were 2 registers open, and each line had about 5 people, so there was a decent wait. Our entitled shopper comes up, looks at the line with disdain, and stands in between the lines, eyeing up the rest of us. A mother and child were third from the front. The mother was partially on her cell phone, but was also talking to her child. The entitled shopper spotted this, and sure enough, as the mother was replying to a text when the line moved slightly, she didn't immediately move forward as she was finishing her text. The entitled shopper then hurried over and stood in the barely available spot, cutting the line. The mother, realizing the entitled shopper's behavior but wanting to remain polite, told her, "There is a line." The entitled shopper smugly replied, "No, I will not move. You are on your phone, which means you're not in line." At that moment, an employee came over and began to speak with the entitled shopper. The employee said, "Ma'am, I think there was a misunderstanding, but if you could leave." The entitled shopper cut her off, saying, "No, I will not move. I am staying in my spot, and if anything, they gesturing at the mother and her child should have to go to the back of the line for poor etiquette." Ironically, much like a Karen, the employee, smiling mischievously, replied, "As you wish, ma'am," and turned to the mother and her child. "Excuse me, I am opening a register and can take you next. Please follow me." The entitled shopper, pulling a face of shock and surprise, stammered, But I." The employee cut her off, saying, "You said you were staying in your spot, so I am taking the next customer. If you have a complaint, feel free to submit one through our online survey." The mother and her child, grinning, followed the cashier, with the man behind them in line close behind, glaring at the entitled shopper, almost daring her to try and take his spot. The entitled shopper loudly declared, "Unbelievable," and looked at the rest of us for sympathy, but was met with glares or was ignored. Eventually, she just pouted, mumbling about poor customer service, which I was able to hear as I was now behind her. The ultimate end to this was that 30 seconds later, when the entitled shopper became second in line and had put 3 of her items on the belt, another cashier came up and grabbed me, allowing me to get checked out before her. Story 2. I'm from upstate New York, where we have lots of beautiful trees. However, at this time of year, those beautiful trees produce lots of fallen leaves. My family runs a leaf clearing business where we help clear, bag, and collect leaves from the roof to the ground. Today, we were clearing a property, with 2 of us using leaf blowers while another was doing roof and gutter work. The house next door had double the amount of leaves as the house we were working on, especially in the back. 10 minutes in, the entitled neighbor appeared, wildly waving her hands as if we were about to back into something precious. Let's call the entitled neighbor Karen for short. One of my family members, put off by her rudeness but still being polite, said, Yes. You're Mrs. Karen, correct? Is everything okay?" Karen, putting on a fake smile, replied, "Yes, I am, and no, I need you to move your cars. My son will be home soon, and I need to make sure he has room to pull in." I glanced over at a car backing onto her property and asked, "Looks like a car just pulled in. Is that him?" Karen quickly looked over and dropped the smile, saying, "Look, I don't want any damage to occur if someone backs up, and I need to leave in a bit, so just move the second one." I sighed. "Yes, ma'am." Karen looked smug as she watched me put down my backpack and move my car off the middle driveway space between her and the neighbor, which wasn't blocking anyone, and I placed it in an area further down. After completing most of the front yard, we began pushing the leaves to the back to be pushed off a drop-off. I saw Karen approach my family member who was putting away the gear from the roof and gutter work and was preparing to join us in collecting the backyard. I wasn't there for this, but my family member told me the conversation. "Karen, hello, you all are doing such a good job. Before I forget, a nice neighbor told me you would also blow out my back patio area since our house lines are so close. Make sure you completely clear out the fire pit and chairs, as I have company coming tonight." My family member replied, "Oh, I wasn't made aware. Give me a moment to check in with the nice neighbor, and I will flag my team over there." Karen, looking furious, exclaimed, "Excuse me, you think I'm a liar? They aren't home, but I will be sure to inform the nice neighbor of your disrespect. Good luck getting them back next year." My family member, not born yesterday but also wanting to call this lady out, faked concern and said, "Oh, of course, ma'am. I am so sorry for upsetting you. We will of course clear out your back patio, boo." Karen, cutting him off and putting on another smug grin, said, "Make sure the deck gets cleared out too. I better not see a single leaf." Karen turned to walk away, and my family member followed up loudly as he was taking out his phone. "But I will call this neighbor really quick, since they forgot to tell me about your fire pit. I should double check if they may want us to clean out the stone wall and swing set area." Karen stopped and whipped around, looking frantic. "What? No, you don't need to." My family member, having already dialed, smiled as the nice neighbor picked up and began to converse cheerfully, watching Karen's face pale, then redden as she heard him mention her. Once he hung up, he looked her dead in the eye and said, "Thank you for reminding me. Turns out they did want the stone wall area done, but they didn't seem to know about clearing your property at all." Karen, frustrated, said, "Well, you already blew a bunch of leaves onto my yard. You should at least remove them." My family member sarcastically replied, "Sure, we will grab the 20 leaves we blew over." He then bent over and began loudly counting the 20 leaves on her front lawn. Karen stomped back to her house, furious, and he dropped the small handful of leaves he had collected and joined us, quickly telling us her scheme. We made sure to get every nook and cranny of the nice neighbor's yard, leaving not a single leaf. Our small act of revenge, when we got to the hill drop, we would lean on the trees for support to push the leaves as far down as possible. 2 of the trees we leaned on still had leaves on them, barely holding on. The branches, well, as fortune would have it, hung over Karen's property over her patio, with a fire pit. The trees dropped several small masses near her precious fire pit, and I would be lying if I said I didn't give the tree an extra shake when we finished. Enjoy cleaning your yard, Karen. Story 3. This story isn't exactly mine, but the situation I found myself in was, it happened a few years ago when I was working at a booth in a mall selling phone cases. There's a rumor in my town, though I have no idea how it started, that this guy, Justin, is faking being in a wheelchair to get attention and sympathy. I know him personally and know that this rumor is not true. He was hit by an inebriated driver while crossing a pedestrian crossing 10 years ago and is a paraplegic. I'm someone who has experienced a similar injury and can easily spot someone faking a disability. Anyone else with a spinal cord injury will be able to relate. I was at work, serving a customer, when I saw Justin going past in his wheelchair. My customer saw him and scoffed. "Can you believe people like that? It's bad enough for people like you, but people like him. He needs to stop faking it." I was shocked, and for a second, I didn't know what to say. I was in customer service mode and didn't want to say anything that could make me lose my job. I replied, That's Justin. He's a paraplegic. He's not faking it." The customer responded, "Oh, he has fooled you too. You poor girl." I said, "His name is Justin, and he was hit by an inebriated driver 10 years ago on street name. He was in a coma for a week and lost sensation from the waist down. If you look this up online, you'll find the report of the incident. Please do some research and don't believe everything you hear." She half-heartedly muttered some apology and walked away without buying anything. I want to say that I haven't heard any other conversations about Justin faking it. But it's a small town, and gossip spreads like wildfire here. It's been about 13 years since his injury, and for someone who is supposedly faking it, he's kept up the act very well. The moral of the story? Don't believe everything you hear. Story 4. This is indeed as odd as it sounds. Apparently, I'm not allowed to have an opinion. 2 days ago, I received in the post mail to those in America a letter from my workplace. It had a first-class stamp and the words "private and confidential" written on it. One does not receive such letters from my workplace unless you have done something either very right or very wrong. As far as I was aware, I had done neither, so I was unsure what I had done to deserve such correspondence. I opened the letter to try and figure out its purpose and what I'd done to receive it. It was a letter informing me that I had a disciplinary hearing today, the 4th of June, due to a social media comment. What on earth? I hadn't mentioned anything about my job in literal months before Christmas, I think, and they didn't specify in the letter what it was that I'd said, so I had to wait. I get anxiety badly and have a heart condition. I had to deal with not eating properly and chest pains for 2 whole days from the stress of this letter. Since I live with my mother, she also knew. I was allowed to bring her to the meeting with me too, but she's as anxious as I am, so she barely slept since the letter arrived. Today at 10 a.m. is when the meeting took place. We started work at 4 a.m., so I had to survive 6 hours at work with chest pain and fear of the unknown. When I got in there, my manager was absolutely lovely. The comment that got me dragged into the office: I had stated that I found a rainbow shirt designed by Harvey Price glamour model Katie Price's disabled son to be unattractive, and someone took offense to this. This entitled petty person decided to find my profile, check my place of work, and make a complaint to head office in an attempt to get me fired because I hold a different opinion than hers. I'm sorry for not bowing and scraping at the feet of Harvey Price, but I'm not going to call his design beautiful if I don't think so just because he's disabled. It's just an opinion, after all. My manager basically laughed, told me to take my workplace off my profile, and said words to the effect of, had she complained in our branch instead of to head office, she would have been laughed out of the building. Ridiculous behavior. Story 5. Let's start with some background information. This happened 2 years ago when I was in my junior year of high school. I was involved in a group at our high school that was in charge of going to middle schools and telling them about high school and how to get involved, all that important stuff. We went to one middle school that was notoriously known for having really entitled teachers. Another important detail to mention is that I'm a relatively short guy, so people sometimes mistake me for being much younger than I am, despite being nearly an adult. Now on to the story. I'll include dialogues, but everything is more paraphrased since this happened almost 2 years ago, and I, of course, can't remember exactly what everyone said. The cast includes me, 2 friends who were part of the high school group, and an entitled teacher. This whole thing starts when we enter the school. The teacher from our high school who drove us to the school left to go to the office to sign us in and told us to head to the library. We did as we were told and started walking to the library. As we were walking, we came across a wall showing past graduates. The 2 girls I was with both went to this school, so we stopped so they could look at the photos. I pulled out my phone to check my texts while I waited for them. That's when the entitled teacher approached. In a very entitled tone, the teacher asked, "What are you 3 doing here?" My friend replied, "Oh, we're just looking at the old photos." She assumed the teacher would have known we were there for the high school presentation. That was a mistake. The entitled teacher demanded, "Get back to class. Now." Then she looked at me, who was looking up at her from my phone, and said, "Give me your phone." Confused, I said, "No, thanks." I really didn't know how to respond. The girls made fun of me for saying this after the whole incident. It was a joke for a while. The entitled teacher, holding out her hand, insisted, "Give me your phone. No phones during school hours." At this point, we all realized she was unaware of the high school presentation. My other friend tried to explain, "We don't go to this school. We're here for the presentation and just wanted to look at the..." The entitled teacher interrupted, "I don't want to hear your excuses. You have all been terribly rude to me. Go down to the office now, and I will call your parents." I was shocked by this, considering my middle school was never like this. When I talked to the girls afterward, they said this sort of behavior was normal from teachers at this school, but they assumed this teacher was new since they had never seen her before. I said, "Sorry, but we really don't go to this school. We're just gonna head to the library now." The entitled teacher firmly replied, "No, you are not. Give me your phone, and I'm calling your parents." She then tried to reach for my phone, so I backed up and put my phone in my pocket. I told her, "Don't touch my property." The entitled teacher, looking absolutely offended that I disobeyed her, declared, "This behavior will not be tolerated. Tell me your teacher's name, and I will make sure your phone is locked up for the rest of the day while you are in detention." This is just a summary of what she said. She rambled on a bit about respect. At this point, we were saved by our actual teacher coming down the hall from the office. She stopped and asked what the problem was, and we explained. The entitled teacher looked horrified and instantly apologized, acting all nice. We were upset, but we quickly moved on from the incident and went to do our presentation.